Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the Student Achievement Committee meeting to order, May 27th, 2026 at 4:30 on the dot, and we will start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, before we go to public comment, even though there isn't anybody here, I think I'd like to go right around the table. We have a lot of new faces and a lot of people here, so maybe we can start with, Maureen.
Sure. Hi, my name is Maureen Hamilton. I was a teacher in the district and I'm a community member on this subcommittee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Addie Buckley. I'm a senior at Coggins-Chog. I'm here to observe for my government class.
I'm Kristen Allen. I was also a former educator in the district, and I'm also a parent and community member.
Linda Darcy, Board of Ed.
Lucy Petrello, Board of Ed.
Bob Moore, Board of Ed.
Sydney Leggett, Superintendent.
Will Overton, I'm a sophomore at Coggins-Chog.
And this official student member on the Student Achievement. Is that you? Liza Siegel, Associate Director of Learning.
Ben Shouty, Spanish teacher here at Coggins-Chog.
Amy Trainer, Assistant Principal at Coggins-Chog.
I'm Rosaria Janetti. I'm the Assistant Director of Professional Learning and School Improvement ACES.
Very good. Welcome. Second item is public comment. Do you have anybody online?
We do not have any public online.
Okay. We're gonna move on. Approval of agenda. I have a motion to approve.
Could I make
Yes.
just one request? We do have our two Spanish teachers here for one of them. Would we be able to move the CRHS course approval up first before the graduation cohort data?
Number 9.
Yes,
Okay.
just since.
So
My wife will not complain. Thanks.
That's what I figured.
Okay,
I'm
so
here
approval-
also online. I'm one of the Spanish teachers. My camera is not working, but this is Kate Drummond, the World Language Department Chair. Sorry, I can't figure this out. I've started my computer twice.
We can hear you well.
Yep.
Okay,
Love it.
perfect.
Okay, so we'll have an approval of the agenda, moving item number 9 to right after approval of minutes.
So moved.
Linda
Second.
and Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, item number 4, approval of minutes of the February 25th, 2026 meeting. I don't know if anyone found anything. I looked through them and didn't see anything. So I recommend a motion to approve.
So moved.
So Linda
Second.
and Bob. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I would like to note that Jamie Warback has arrived. He's arrived.
Maureen. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, so we will go to the high school course approval.
Liza, do you want to take it, or Katie? I'm not sure which one of you is going to do an introduction to the course approval.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Why's your
Sure. So we had one, course proposal. The course proposal was for cultural cooking, which is an interdisciplinary course, combining Spanish, language vocabulary with cooking opportunities to learn about cultural cooking in South, Central, and Spanish-speaking nations.
We have both of our Spanish teachers, both Kate Drummond online as well as Ben Shouty here. Then, if approved, we'll be running 2 sections of cultural cooking next year. We did include it with your permission in the program of studies to see if there would be student interest. We made sure absolutely to ensure that even though it was included in the world language department in that program of studies, just for ease of finding the course, that it would not count for world language credit. Instead, it's a half-year opportunity for students to be exposed to the culture and just get extra opportunities to get to work with our teachers in the world language department. So far, if the course does get approved to run tonight, which fingers crossed, the sections are looking pretty full. We have right now numbers around 12 and 14 with a max of 16 students because of our cooking facilities. We are here today just to answer any questions in hopes of getting the final approval.
So is that 12 to, that's 12 to 14 per section, 2
So
sections?
that's 2 sections, one of 12, one of 14, which is awesome.
We also have Ben, who has applied to do more work over the summer on this as well for curriculum hours. So there will be some more work, probably in areas such as the rubric development, resources, and any other final touches that need to be done.
And Ben, if you don't mind, can you just talk to the committee just a little bit about what inspired this course?
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking to stay, competitive within Coggins-Jog and making kids, retention rate is obviously something that we care a lot about. My vision for this is I think it takes some of the most fun parts of a Spanish classroom, the food, the culture, the geography, how it all plays a role together. And it allows us to make it accessible to everybody, French students, Spanish students, just all types of students. I've had a lot of people come up to me asking me about it. There's excitement already. There's a little bit of a buzz, and that's without even really pushing it on anybody. So I just think there's a lot of excitement about it, get people excited, maybe draw in more Spanish 1 members eventually, just draw them into that world.
Yeah, and if I
Kate,
could
did you
jump
wanna-
in on that. Hi, I feel like the voice from nowhere up here. But yeah, so we also have been running a global health class the last few years as an elective, and it's been great to have an elective in our world language area. Unfortunately, the program that we've been working with has changed literally their whole setup. So that course isn't really viable at this point until I find some new connections. So we were trying to think, what are other things that would get students interested that would give them kind of that global view. And, like Ben said, hopefully get them interested in the world around them through a different way. And we know that the cooking classes have always been, interesting to the students. And I do a major unit in Spanish 4. As where one of the performance assessments is that the students are in the foods room cooking for a day. And it's literally the thing that every year when I do my end of the year feedback from the students, that's their favorite thing. And how can we do this again? And when they get to senior year, can we do that class? Can we do that class again? So, we thought as a half year class, we came up with 8 different units that definitely need more than what, you have in front of you. Obviously we have the bare bones that we did. I know Ben is, Ben's great at curriculum and he's willing to, put in the time and jump into it. So I'm really excited and I hope that we're able to, approve this course and, like I said, have another offering as an elective in the world language department.
One thing I know this committee asked about last time is the placement in the program of study. So we originally tried to pull this out just so it's uniquely an elective, and we were going to make a category for just electives. But this would be the only elective that couldn't potentially count for another type of credit, right? So it would be strange to just have this on its own, but it is in the world language area with a bold statement that this does not count towards the world language requirement.
Correct.
I think one thing we've talked about though is that it would hopefully generate interest in that
Absolutely.
world language department and cause students to want to continue.
For sure.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Now, there's quite a few units here and it looks like each of them go a semester. So when the students sign up, do they just sign up for maybe just Mexico or Spain, or do they get all of the? That's a great question.
So I think the idea is with a semester course, if I'm not wrong, Katie, a semester is about 18 weeks, 20 weeks, right?
Yeah.
40 weeks in the school year. So with 8 units, we were thinking around 2 units or 2 weeks or so per unit, and then giving some time off in between. So that first unit would be kind of learning everything that we could culture-wise, giving some basic vocab that has to do with it. We're going to have a mixture of students. So, it'll be interesting to be able to pair some of the higher level Spanish students also with kids that have never taken it, but teaching them, I envision kind of a collaborative working together to, talk about I like this or that, or this is a main ingredient here or there. And then kind of the second week going into more student produced cooking or, more of their performance based is kind of the way that I was envisioning it. And giving them kind of a wider view of just, there's just so much out there. And there is a lot of things that cross over, you look at the use of corn, for example, potatoes, there are things that they'll see, different spices and whatnot. So I think it'll be interesting for them to make those connections as the year goes on, or as the semester goes on.
That sounds good, because if I had to choose just 2 areas, I don't know. 2 to choose.
Well, you pick Spade. You always pick Spade. So near and dear to my heart. So
You're already
in trouble. I don't see Costa Rica on here, so.
Well, but Costa Rica can go. Costa Rica goes in with. I actually spent a lot of time in Costa Rica. I lived there for a little bit after I graduated college, so also near and dear to my heart. But can go in a lot with the Central American, and even when you talk about the islands, because there are a lot of crossover foods. So.
Well rebutted.
Ready to go with this in September?
We will be. So if approved tonight, I know Ben has already pledged several hours of curriculum writing this summer just to get way more into the nitty gritty and
There's a lot.
details.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But yes, I mean, if we get that approval, our world language department is really prepared for this. We have students who are interested. I think even Addie, as our senior over there, is a little bit jealous that she's gonna miss this opportunity,
Yes.
but we will, hit the ground running, and the first course will run in September.
Sounds good. Any other
Of
questions,
course.
thoughts?
Is this taught by two teachers or?
No, so the course itself will be taught primarily by Ben, but I believe the planning in the background is going to have a lot of communication with Jamie Frederickson, our culinary teacher here, as well as just inter-department. I think Kate and Heather are also going to be very much involved in planning it because it's exciting. It's new.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might get a sample of your cooking before.
I was like, that's another.
That's why he's doing it, not me, Bob.
So perhaps in our fall update, if that's a request, we can absolutely make it happen.
Absolutely.
Bring people in to eat it.
I think at least that one board meeting should be fed by the.
The kitchen?
Yes.
Of
We
course.
can make that happen.
Now we're talking stipends, right?
I do applaud your efforts to make things more exciting and more modern. That is wonderful. We need to do that for sure. I'll reiterate this again. Last time this came up during student achievement, safety issues, kids get so excited. They're not maybe normally acclimated to the kitchen. I need to make sure that's certainly covered a little bit. We can't have hair hanging out, getting caught in mixers. If something can happen, it will. Okay, that's the world that I live in, and I see it every day, but that's me.
Jamie.
Cost wise too, again, it's the world that I come from, we're asked to basically sustain ourselves, meaning what we produce, we sell one way or another to cover the cost of the ingredients. I mean, that's a good model to follow because it shows look, we're not just doing this, and I don't know budget wise. Obviously, ingredients are expensive to get the correct ones. I mean, field trip opportunities are amazing as well.
Yes.
I think it's so valuable to bring kids out of an element where they are not the dominant person. Okay, when you walk into some of these markets, whether it's as close by as Meriden or you can go into Hartford, I just see so many wonderful things. And what I've always experienced is when you're not of the norm walking in there, people are very friendly. They look at you like, you don't normally shop here, do you? And people will suddenly open up. It's like, you know what I do with that? I use this ingredient to make, it's valuable for sure indeed. So I applaud the efforts for sure. Just safety and cost.
Perfect. Thank you.
And will the recipes all be in Spanish or are they gonna be?
That might have to be differentiated based on who we've got. If I get a section with Spanish 2, 3, 4 and up, sure. Let's do it. Let's combine that. If not, if we just have someone who's never studied before, it'll be in English, but we'll teach phrases, we'll teach ingredients, maybe side by side. But I think that would change.
I think even just the comparison, being able to compare the English to the Spanish and having people, I know there are a few going to be seniors that are interested in the class that I think had said that they had planned to, had signed up. So I don't know if it would ends up fitting in their schedule, but if you have students that are in Spanish 4, Spanish 5, a few of them in there with lower level kids, I think it's a great opportunity to, not only differentiate, but have them collaborate on that.
And to the metric system too.
Yes, I was thinking about it in my mind.
Metric system.
Yes.
Kilos.
Yeah. Okay, I have 3 questions, one of which may have an A and B, but other than that, give me the gong, all right? It's no secret I've been skeptical, right, about this class. I was a world language teacher. So my biggest concern falls under the 2 biggest concerns. One is rigor. And I have been very clear that I don't think it should be considered a world language class because it's not teaching language.
Mhm.
It could be a culinary class. It could be a social studies class. But I am putting that aside because here's a couple of things that I want to know what your answer you too, Kate, but I'm staring at you, sorry. Kate, good move to not have the camera on.
I just took a picture just to show you guys it's really true. So I'll send it to Katie.
So my first question is, you run into one of these students 5 years from now, and they were in your class, and they loved it. Of course, I would love it too. What do you want them to remember? I had a colleague who used to call them the forever, and that's what her enduring understandings were. But once they leave our presence, they don't really remember a whole lot for a whole long time, but that forever is often what they remember. What do you hope after this sequence, this unit, these 8 units or however many you managed to get through, what do you want them to remember 5 or 10 years from the completion? It doesn't have to be fancy, like literally.
That's a good
I think
question.
I've got one. I mean, I grew up in Durham, so I know this community. I know that it can be a bubble. And I think I would want my ideal student to realize there's more out there.
Yeah.
Just kind of like what you said, even next town over, there's markets where you can go and be met with respect if you just show it.
Yeah.
I guess I would want the student to remember, wow, I didn't realize there was so much good food, so many good people. There were so many connections I could make just by leaving town and feeling comfortable and going with some background knowledge. So
Awesome. Thank you. Kate, you got
Yeah.
anything?
And then I would say off of that, I like you said, the language I don't think is the primary focus. I think that the language is almost secondary here. Like, yes, we want them to learn language. We want them to learn things that they wouldn't necessarily learn in a normal culinary class. But I think that, like Ben said, knowing that there's a world outside of Durham and how it's all interconnected and how, history has shaped how foods in the Caribbean, what foods are popular in the Caribbean just based on who's been living there, so I think that it's just, like he said, the takeaway is that there's a bigger world out there.
Yeah. Well done. And then also I do, that enduring understanding of food reflects the history, culture, and geography of a country. Like, I love that part.
Of course. Yeah.
So
And I think Ben and I both have, traveled, pretty significantly. And I think that we also, try to bring those experiences into our classes. And I know he's more of the foodie than I am. I'm pretty not bold when it comes to eating. I'll try everything. But I think that, we try to infuse that now as much as we can. But when we have, a full curriculum to teach, sometimes those things get lost. So some of the, being able to spend more time on different things that the students show interest in, whether it be, pre-Hispanic foods that are still used today, or how Spain, the culture of ham in Spain. Like, it's cool to be able to kind of go where they want a little bit more with it, when it's not, okay, we need to get through this grammar curriculum or vocab curriculum for proficiency, in order to gain proficiency in the language. Oh, and that's a crash in my house.
And this is a kind of a technical question, but let's say we run the class. For some bizarre reason, the State Department of Education decides they have the time to come and hang out at Region 13. And they look at the program of studies and they say, this is interesting. The teacher who teaches is certified in world language. They're not certified in culinary. They're not certified in social studies. What standards are they using for this class? And I will add into that, and I had mentioned to Sydney, this is one of my concerns, is if you teach out of your certification without a, minor assignment, technically, if it's 1/5 of your assignment, that 1/5 doesn't go towards TRB because you're teaching outside your certification. So there's a technical aspect of this also. Part of it is more an ideology about, so what standards are you using? And if you're looking at some of the assessments being things like knife skills or how you work what qualifies you, what credentials do you have to assess using a culinary standards? And again, it's very technical, so I don't expect a real answer, but like, how would you conceptualize that this is a world language class? I am certified in world language, and that makes, and those are the standards that I'm using.
So I think in terms of when we were writing the curriculum, we were using like the world language standards. So we used like the 4 C's. And so we have in there, like comparisons and cultures and what we're doing with that. So we looked at it from that lens when we were writing the scope and sequence.
And then
World
the
over-
foods.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, good. I was just going to say, and the foods are the vehicle.
Yes.
Foods in the
Yeah.
vehicle that drive the 4 Cs and world language.
Sure, and we're also very lucky that our culinary teacher, Jamie, has put a major emphasis on her own professional growth of wanting to do more collaborations with other departments, both so that she can, boost the importance of foods and family consumer sciences. I should slow down when I say that. As a part of a well-rounded education and preparing students for the life that is outside of Durham, but also just inviting those other teachers and faces into her classroom to show how food is such a huge part of our lives, of our friendships, of our families, of our cultures. So when Jamie heard about this class too, she was like, I'm so ready. And then lastly, I'm not going to steal thunder from later of number 14 with the strategic plan, but we're starting this big emphasis on cross-curricular connections and just finding ways, interdisciplinary approaches, getting other ideas into the classroom and not just staying in our boxes as much. So I know there needs to be a much more technical, like, yes, this exact standard and whatnot. But the overarching is like, this is just one big step into what we're hoping a lot of our classrooms are going to start looking like. So we appreciate, hopefully, the trust and support to get it rolling and see where we go from there.
So you're talking about like team teaching.
Not yet, but hypothetically in the future, if that's sort of where the strategic plan leads us, it could be, yeah. But I even think just Kate and Ben, I know that they're going to dedicate a lot of time outside of just their own teaching load to just collaborate and plan and bounce ideas and make sure we are doing things safely. I know that Jamie Frederickson is, I'm sure, going to give a lot of advice to make sure that we are following, code.
Yeah.
And not cutting fingers off by accident and other things that could happen. So this
I actually
really
was in her classroom today and we had that discussion. So we were
I
actually
saw that
talking
one.
today about how, what we would need from her in terms of safety and like beginning knife skills, whether it's, her teaching Ben how to teach that or Ben, her coming into that class. So we were kind of brainstorming that today.
If perhaps you can do something like in Boy Scouts, before you can use a penknife, you have to get your chip to be able to do that. So maybe there's some kind of a competency test for
Absolutely.
safety.
Gamify it.
Yes.
That's right. So yeah, my last suggestion is that as you have, at the state, the 4 Cs are just so vague, right?
Yeah.
I would encourage you, when you look at the interpersonal communication or those pieces, to look at the ACTFL standards and embed some of the ACTFL standards in there. Because it's a much more rigorous system. I'm not running the school, right? I am but one vote. And I'm not gonna stand in the way because kids are gonna love it. I just want to make sure that we look at all of those things because I think there's a lot of technical issues here. And I appreciate being right-sized in the idea of this is what we should be doing. We should be doing cross-curricular. We should be. So now we have to figure out how to do that in a rigorous and engaging way without ticking off the State Department of Ed.
Sure.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
So Will, would you take this course? Yeah, all right.
Any other thoughts? So going forward, it sounds as though we are approving of this, the Student Achievement Committee, but then we have to bring it to the board for the actual approval.
Sure.
Yep. So that's what we'll do next meeting.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get this.
Don't stay.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
we'll see you.
Thank you.
At which meeting?
I said, we'll see you at the board. meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So item number, well, I'm gonna use this 5, the graduation cohort data.
Just, this is, something that I believe I've seen is presented every year, at this meeting. I don't know if this goes on to the board, but this is just the state report that we get for percentage of students who graduated in 4 years and broken down by demographics. So, we at, Regional School Districts 13 are at 92.5% of students graduate in 4 years. That's for 25, it was 106 students in that cohort and 98 of those students graduated in 4 years. The state average, I figured you might be curious, is 88.9, which is actually higher than I thought it would be. So we're above state average, and then you can see how it's, for us, broken down by different demographics. One of the things that, when people look at this, that of course we all remember, is that in a small district, a few students make the percentages look bigger.
Mhm.
And this also doesn't mean that these people didn't graduate, it just means that they didn't graduate in 4 years. Yeah.
What if they graduated in 3?
Have we had anybody graduate in 3 that you know of?
Yeah, and you're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's interesting, because,
I wonder if they skew the data.
because it wasn't, but it was within 4 years, so,
And then, and they do it by cohort,
By
I would
cohort.
imagine,
well,
Yeah.
interesting.
but good question.
Now, Sydney, you said this comes out every year.
Yes,
Does any, Bob, do you remember seeing this before?
No.
I would
No,
assume
think
this,
is the first year.
I made the assumption this was something that the state sends and that the student achievement committee would look at every year.
Well, right.
If you don't want to see it, that's okay.
No, I do. And we do.
Yeah.
It's on the accountability report.
One of the-
Yeah, definitely should. I just don't recall ever seeing it before. I think this is great.
What was our percentage this year compared to
Thank
other
you.
years?
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it'll be, next year we'll get the report for this year.
Okay. And so MTA students are like the kids that go on to receive further education?
Yes, transition students, yeah.
Okay.
But they also count within the,
Within
because they
4
do
years.
graduate,
They do
right? So they're, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and then they have extra years,
Mhm.
not extra years. They receive more services.
Okay.
I think fascinating data is there's a 10-point difference, right, between female and male.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. I know.
It's probably always been true.
Mhm.
Well, that's what I said, only seeing this 1 year, we don't know what it looked like other years, if that's the way it always is.
Well, moving forward, I can take each year and just do like a building
Together,
graph.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because if it happens every year, then that's an issue we have, like if it's not an aberration,
Right.
then that's something to dig into.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Very good, thank you. You're welcome. Item number 6, curriculum.
Sorry. Hello, everybody. We get to this large agenda item here. We have Rosie here from ACES, who has been wonderful to work with to provide some consultation regarding our curriculum here in RSD 13. And she has prepared a presentation about the curriculum audit that was done by ACES, as well as some of the work that was done this year in district with certain content area teams. So here you are.
All right, if you just give me 1 minute, I'll pull up your presentation.
Sure.
Okay. I just want to make, well, we don't have anybody online, but for the recording, I want to make sure that it's here so everyone can follow along.
Okay, while she's getting that up, thank you for having me. And thank you for having us do this work. It was really great to work not only with the teachers, it was really wonderful to work with Liza to have her leadership going through this process. She was wonderful to work with and really helped us along in the process to work with, better work with teachers. So I'm going to share some of, apologize if you're back. Turn to it. Do you want to stand up there? Or would you rather-
Wherever you would like to be.
Okay, I don't want
Just
my
tell
back
me when to
towards-
advance slides.
Sure, you can advance them. So I'm going to take you through an overview of the curriculum audit, the scope of the work, the audit process that we went through. I'm going to take you through some of the district findings, the district-wide findings, some of the curriculum writing and support that we did this year, and also some recommendations and implementation priorities moving forward. Okay. So this curriculum audit was designed to really evaluate the alignment to standards, the fidelity to UBD, so understanding by design, assessment and rigor collaboration or calibration, right? How well assessments are aligned to the curriculum, to the written curriculum. And really a big part of it was the vertical coherence across grade spans and sustainability, right? How are we able to sustain the written curriculum and those structures? Okay. You can move on. So we used several research informed frameworks in order to conduct the audit. So we based the audit around UBD for fidelity, the fidelity of UBD, how well are we staying to the state standards or the state frameworks? Cognitive rigor, we used the depth of knowledge, Webb's depth of knowledge, to really measure the strategic reasoning and transfer. Okay, so we talk about DOK levels and how rigorous is our curriculum. We also focused on UDL and equity. Okay, so multiple means of engagement, expression, right, to reduce those learning barriers for all of our kiddos. And then we really talked about or analyzed some of the systems for the documentation, coherence, sustainability, and version control. Okay, so how many versions of curriculum do we have? How many materials do we have? How accessible is it to teachers? Okay. So when we look at some of the materials that we analyzed, we reviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of materials and curriculum documents. We looked at UBD unit plans. We looked at all the unit plans that were available to us. We looked at all curriculum maps that were available to us. We analyzed pacing guides. We looked for logical sequencing. We looked for those transfer goals and essential questions. How well were they aligned? We looked for standards alignment. Are we hitting all standards in every content area that we need to hit? We looked at performance tasks. We looked at all of the assessments, in particular performance task, right? How we evaluated the cognitive demand of the performance tasks, right? What's that real world application? We also looked at rubrics and descriptors. How are we gauging the clarity? How are we really getting that expectation or the clarity of expectations to students? And how are we grading? And right, that tends to be an equity issue too, if we're not grading the same way. And then we looked at the vertical alignment. We ensured that skills progressed across grade levels, vertically K-12. Some of the audit components that we used, we had an inventory review. We looked at what curriculum was available for us to review. Again, we looked at the standards alignment. We did an analysis. We looked at each stage of UBD, stage 1, that conceptual review. We looked at assessment calibration. We looked at the DOK and rigor mapping, vertical alignment, governance, and sustainability. Okay, so those were our big topics. Okay, now for the good part. So we have some really strong strengths in the district, according to the documents that we reviewed. We have a really strong UBD foundation. So Liza's done a really nice job being able to put that framework in place and make sure that all curriculum teams were using the same framework. Okay, so there's structural consistency present across K-12 content areas. There was evidence of high quality student production in terms of some of the performance tasks that we analyzed. It was visible that there was great performance tasks that were happening within the district. And then the emerging standards at vertical alignment, there was evidence in some content areas of really strong vertical alignment, and also that modeling are taking root, that there was strong teaching practices also happening within that curriculum. Some of the needs, we focused on 6 of the highest needs that we saw within the documents. So we have that conceptual precision, right? Formalizing stage 1 understandings and transfer expectations across units. Some of the pieces that we found were some of the understands were not transferable. They were more of need to know, right? What do students need to know, and not so much of what students have to understand outside of the real world. Okay. Vertical codification, formalizing instructional progression that exists in practice. So is that written curriculum really happening in practice? Okay. Establishing formal revision cycles, looking at that again. I know that exists already, but taking a look at that again. Is it feasible? Is it working? Do we need to modify that? Right? Version control. How many versions of the same materials do we have? How many versions of the same documents do we have? Which ones need to stay and which ones can go, right? Because if teachers are looking at hundreds and hundreds of materials, it depends on which one they choose to teach from, right? If students get the same experience. Okay, so just some codifying of that process. Also, again, documentation focus, consistency of usability of the curriculum across all departments, right? We want students to have a shared experience, but we also need teachers to be able to use the curriculum in a way that's effective for them. System coherence, right? This is a big one. We really want to move from teacher-dependent implementation to really a reliable system-dependent consistency. There are some really great pockets of teaching that it's not solidified through curriculum. So we have really great things happening in individualized classrooms, and we want that to be system-dependent and not teacher-dependent, right? We want students to have that same experience, not just the luck of having a really great teacher that does really great curriculum work. And then assessment calibration. We identified standardizing definitions of proficiency and rigor to eliminate systemic variances. Okay, so that is in the area of performance tasks and assessment. Are students getting the same experience? Are those rigorous? Are those performance tasks rigorous? Are they transferring their knowledge? And then that is in blue because we're going to go to the next slide. We identified this piece as one of the largest needs in the district to be able to have that assessment calibration, not only because it's one of the most important pieces in curriculum writing, but this is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. So when we align our assessment calibration, we really deepen the understanding of standards of teachers, right? We build that shared efficacy of understanding our standards at a really deep level, all right, as we build those performance tasks. We also create a shared understanding of mastery. What does it look like for students to really master the content and to really have a deep understanding of the standards that we're teaching? That also aligns to the instructional rigor. We want them to be rigorous, and then alignment between that curriculum. Right, and then we go into the authenticity and that student-centered learning. So if we provide really rigorous performance tasks, then we build off of that. We go into the phase one, we look at our performance tasks, we say, does our phase one, do our knows, understands, and do's really match what we're expecting at the end? And then we have that clarification. All right, so this year, what we have begun doing is we've embedded professional learning and UBD expectations in curriculum design. So we worked with several content area teachers to begin refining and writing curriculum. The content area teachers and teams developed performance tasks while revisiting like that cyclical nature of curriculum writing. So through performance tasks and the understanding of how to build a really strong performance task, we would go back and say, does this match what we really want students to know, to understand, and be able to do? One of the worries from teachers with writing curriculum was that they were going to rewrite documents. And what we did not want this to feel like was that we were going to just rewrite documents just for the sake of rewriting curriculum documents. So we started with performance tasks so that teachers can hang on to that and feel like they're creating a finished product while integrating some professional learning about what it means to write really strong curriculum and going back to phase one and then eventually going to phase three. Okay, we also calibrated the participants' ability to assess their own curriculum and the next steps for them. So based on what they learned, analyzing their own curriculum and saying, what's next for us? Where do we need to go? And we saw that come alive in a lot of our teams. So recommending next steps, the biggest ones are to calibrate assessment practices through shared rubric language, protocols from moderation protocols, Strengthen stage one design with clear understandings, transfer goals, progression standards. We'd like to see development of DOK progression maps, right? To make sure that those that we work towards independent transfer. And ongoing embedded professional learning focused on UBD alignment, performance tasks, and stage 3 coherence. And then another big bucket of recommended next steps is leadership support for curriculum management and implementation. So now that we have a great curriculum written and being developed, how do we refine the publication protocols, revision cycles, version controls? How do we centralize curriculum, a repository of centralized curriculum for easy access and consistency? Defining district-wide expectations, revisiting district-wide expectations to see if they still fit, and monitoring. How do we monitor this new written curriculum, right? We want to make sure that the written curriculum is also the taught curriculum. So what are the processes for monitoring that? And then really developing sustainable structures that support this cyclical cycle of curriculum review and refinement. That's it. I'm sorry, I probably took more than 15 minutes. Any questions so far? Liza has a 60-page summary.
I do.
Where are you?
Read it word for word.
I have it. I read the draft.
Me too, and I was thinking, is this really a summary? I know it is, but no, it was a very, very thorough audit,
Yes.
and we're very
Very
grateful for that.
grateful for that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And it's also aligned with a lot of what we're seeing in other areas too.
That's great. Absolutely.
Is it possible for the slides to be sent to the board members so that they have?
Absolutely.
Look, the stink bug. That's what's been walking around on my desk here, and that's why constantly I probably brought them from home.
Before I give him a new home.
Don't squish them. Just want those pictures.
And you choose the best meeting.
This is better one. Make sure you write that down. That's a quote. Stink bug. What do you think is the, as you know, we always say our job here is to consult our way out of a job, right? So when thinking about building the capacity, and I know you talked about the structure, but as far as the personnel with the UDL UBD training, like at what point do you think, with the exception of a tune-up or two, right, once in a while, when do you think Region 13 will be ready to take over the reins for this, to have it internal without relying on consultants?
So next year, we do recommend working with whoever, right, to be able to strengthen those structures. And teachers have really gotten embedded professional learning in small bits. I think that is the key to be able to get some really great productivity and learning from the teachers, to be able to get small chunks and then apply it right away. And we're doing that right now. Region 13 doesn't have a complete even phase 1 for all content areas. So something that we noticed was in PE, in music, there was not very much to go from for an audit. So that was one of the recommendations, is to continue to build. So we can continue to build over the next year, maybe the next 2 years, to be able to build curriculum and build structures at the same time with leadership to be able to monitor that curriculum and that implementation.
Thank you. I'm gonna put them outside. Come on, Fred. Oh, this one does up.
We kind of entered a year or two of very little development of curriculum. Liza's brought us back, but how much did we lose in that time period? Are they evident?
So in the curriculum documents, it's outdated. The curriculum's outdated.
Yeah.
just working with some of the teachers, it was evident that a lot of the curriculum that is a written curriculum is not actually what's being taught. And that was just through conversations that I've had with teachers and in my professional learning specialists. So they kind of had the same realization that said a lot of what's written may not be taught.
And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing.
For sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Just to
Absolutely.
clarify, like it could go either way.
For sure. Thank you for saying that. And what we really want to do is pull out the expertise and the really great things that teachers are doing in the classroom, because just because they're taught their written curriculum isn't exactly their taught curriculum, doesn't mean that good things aren't happening, right? But we really want to be able to pull that out and get it written down so we have the same experience for kids.
We have a fifth grade teacher teaching math for the same way for the last 15 years. Do they actually look at a curriculum and say, I'm supposed to be doing this? Or I'm sticking to what I know?
They should be looking at a curriculum because it can't be about the teacher. It has to
I
be.
understand that.
Yeah.
but How do you change
Oh,
that?
you mean, it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that comes with working the bucket of working with leadership and saying, how do we monitor that this is happening, right? Some ways to monitor that curriculum, that the written curriculum is the top curriculum is through walkthroughs, through, observations, that's separate, but through learning walks.
That's the
Right.
monitoring aspect.
What's that? Yes,
You're monitoring. aspect.
sure. That's the monitoring aspect, yes.
But I also think to your point and to your work, that having consistent performance-based assessments. Hey, you get there any way you want. Like, you want to talk about dinosaurs, if you can make it work for the quadratic equation, have at it, but your kids have to pass this.
Yes.
And so hopefully that will do some of it also, because it's like, well, you can't talk about dinosaurs if you're gonna test them on the quadratic
Yeah.
equation.
We want teachers to have autonomy in their classroom as well, but being able to have performance assessments that are common, the common performance assessments will allow teachers to have the flexibility within their classroom, but also have a common goal, right? Have those common understandings for kids.
And the ability to react to a really changed circumstance, like a new state requirement for EL, yeah. Does that mean we stop curriculum and start over, or do we blend it over time?
No, I think that's where the refinement comes in. So the cycles, the curriculum cycles, curriculum's never really done, right? It's not something that's just done and you put it away, right? You revisit it during a cycle and you say, is it still working? Is this still what's best for our students? What other state mandates have come down the pike? For example, social studies. In social studies, they just released new standards in social studies. So even though the curriculum was strong, social studies had one of the stronger curriculums in secondary, the standards were outdated. So we have to go back and revise the standards and make sure that what we're teaching is aligned to those standards and frameworks.
And covers all of them.
And covers all of them, absolutely.
And next year, the vertical alignment will also be a priority, looking at the curriculum across grades.
So we do that at the same time. We look at vertical alignment at the same time that we are writing the curriculum.
So when we had teams come in this year to work with ACES and with Liza, it was a vertical team.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep, there's one representative from each grade level.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think teachers had a positive experience. I
Yeah.
think in the beginning, they were a little hesitant and, but I think when they met our professional learning specialists and they saw that it wasn't just for rewriting documents for the sake of rewriting documents, there was embedded professional learning within each session, they became much more comfortable. And we had support from Liza when we needed the support from Liza, she supported us and she really made sure that things ran smoothly.
Do you think they're ready?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think teachers are open. I think they're one of the things that I heard when I was with them for the first day was, we need the change. We want it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're looking for the coherence. They're looking for the coherence and the consistency. They want it.
Mhm. And it's a great time to look at assessments because there's a state project that is looking at assessments as well. So if we align those pieces, then it will align beautifully.
What do you think is a good solution, inexpensive solution to the version control? Like I like Atlas, it's just,
It's expensive.
it's
It's very
expensive.
expensive.
And then the homegrown, you know, that's where you run into this version control and accessibility, all of that. What have you seen? And I'm literally asking this because I don't do a lot of this. So what works?
So we've had a couple of things that didn't work.
Yeah.
Pieces.
Yeah. Which is great data, so.
It is, I can't answer that. I
Yeah.
have to look a little bit further in.
Yeah.
A lot of the districts that I work with are using Google
Yeah,
and really just try to have a really strict system
yeah,
for sharing curriculum and sharing documents. And so it's not great.
yeah.
But
Yeah, like I said, I
yeah,
don't know.
I'm not sure a platform that houses the curriculum that's going to be inexpensive and as effective as what is currently happening, but we can look
Get
into some of that.
Nick to design one. You probably could totally do
And
that.
say that could be something that could be designed from.
And if it's less than that, Leslie would make a fortune.
Was the model curricula from the State Department of Ed utilized at all, or is that?
So yes, in social studies, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we looked at that and we looked to see like, is this working for us and for the students in front of us? Yeah.
I know they have a bunch on their website.
Yes.
I just wasn't sure if it was useful or.
Mm.
Yeah, social studies was great,
Mhm.
to really compare to what we had, and the teachers, K through 8 really enjoyed looking through that and decided that it really was a good way to go.
Although there is a law coming up, about all, like, basically stage 1 curriculum needing to be published on your website.
Yeah.
Right, so that part of this process is getting ready for that. And we plan, you'll see in the strategic plan a little later that we did reserve next year to complete all stage 1, right? And then we'll do some of the prep work for assessment, but we will dive into that assessment piece very heavily the year after. Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to dive in when we don't have that stage 1 to go on.
And we have to have a scope and sequence
Yes.
for every course. And so over this year, me as well as 2 other stipend positions have been creating those documents based on what we have in the drive and speaking with teachers and sending them out for revision. So we are close. We have over 100 ready to go. And we will continue to do that until we have what we need.
It's been a lot of work.
Yes.
Going back a few years, you know, when the hot word was reimagining everything, we had a lot of discussions around curriculum and how to determine competencies, and we were talking a lot about competency scales, like what is the desired goal, what is the desired outcome of this particular curriculum. You may be aware of the Marzano proficiency scales that I'm currently immersed in as well. I mean, some districts are moving in that direction and less about numerical grades. I'm not suggesting that at all, but is that something to incorporate? Because it seems to be a movement that's happening throughout public education.
And it could be depending on what your strategic plan says and where you want to head in terms of curriculum.
I used to do a lot of consulting for districts when they were moving to competencies, and I found that it didn't really matter what you called them. If it was a letter grade, or if you said it was meets competency or exceeded, the only thing that mattered was what you're actually doing and assessing. I used to tell people they could call them, Fred, Wilma, Barney, and Betty if they wanted to, but they had to mean something. It was all about the meaning, and that you wouldn't necessarily need to make a change in what they're called unless you really needed that message and that cultural shift for that to happen. But if you desire, if Coggins decides to keep A, B, C, D or whatever, as long as those mean what we need them to mean, you can stay. If we think that people won't actually make the transition to competency-based learning, if we keep the traditional grade scale or numbers, then maybe we do need to call it something different.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie.
Now go home.
The curricular so much.
Yes, but preschool, we have something kind of a little specific, a little different, right? The preschool standards. She asked about it preschool.
Preschool is part of the
included in
Oh, yes. Actually, this year they had some release time during our PD days, and they've actually almost completed it with one of our instructional coaches guiding the work.
Any other questions for Rosie?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Okay, item number 8, curriculum work update.
Is that basically what we just did?
It's all right.
Well, we had all the things that we did with Kurt.
We had curriculum
Underlines.
presentation, and that's what I figured, they were all the same.
It was a bundle.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, walk through data.
Yeah.
Item number 10.
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna pull this up. There we go. Liza did this as a complement to a lot of the curriculum work and audit review.
Yes. All right, so instructional visits overview. What I did this year was lead some instructional visits. They're not called here, I did not call them instructional rounds or any other of those names. I just did visits because it was a more informal thing to gather information. A lot of times those walkthroughs are based on a specific area that you're looking for. And this was a lot of different areas that we were looking for just to gather some baseline data about what was going on in classrooms around the district. So between February and March, we went to 35 different classrooms to gather observational evidence. We aimed to collect the evidence about what is happening in the district. And it is gathered to inform professional learning, instructional coaching, curriculum development. And as you'll see later on, it does also have to do with our vision of instruction. It allowed me to have that data for our vision of instruction development as well. There is a link there for instructional visits information guide that I made just to let teachers know that this was to gather information. It was not evaluative and so on. It also showed the different areas that were being looked at. So we were able to go to several different grade levels, and you'll see that it's pretty scattered throughout.
It's linked right here.
We were also able to do we were also able to do half elementary, half secondary. As you can see, Brewster as the blue, having K and 1, pre-K, K and 1 there, and then 2, 3, 4 at Lyman. And then we did strong at 25% and CRHS at 25% as well to get a big pool of data from different schools. We looked at different content areas, but most of the time we did look at mathematics and at ELA. ELA being the yellow and math being the blue.
Did I go too?
No,
far?
that's fine.
Okay.
We looked at different lesson types that we saw as well. And we saw mostly practice and review happening with some new learning and application as well. We did go into classrooms and we did record whatever we did see. So at the bottom, you'll see that a kindergarten class was packing up. So that's what we wrote. And then one was watching a movie. That's what we wrote. So there you have it, the different lessons.
What's the difference between watching a movie and movie?
So the instructional coach and myself did a form each.
Okay.
So that would be the same. Yeah.
So the same, literally the same class and everything's.
Yeah.
What's the difference between new learning and practice?
So new learning is often when someone was either, a student was either looking into something new, or a teacher was giving new learning, new information, or new experience. And practice is when that new experience, new learning had already happened, and then they were practicing it. For example, if someone was teaching, new learning would be addition, someone was giving a new way to do the addition, and then in practice would be students working on practicing that new concept.
Was there any trends like across grade levels or like buildings, like in terms of which ones were doing new learning versus review?
Not
or
really, no.
Trends?
Okay, no.
And nobody was doing assessment during this time period,
No,
which would have been like giving a test or something like that.
correct.
Yeah.
And you would have stayed, like a lot of times when I do learning rounds, you walk in, they're doing assessment, I'm like,
I will say.
I'm not gonna watch your bubble.
We probably moved past that one, just
Yeah,
like what
yeah.
I said earlier about seeing what, but
Yeah.
any ones we did go into,
Yeah.
we recorded, but you're correct.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
Probably walked on by
Right.
for the assessment, yeah. So this one is really interesting for this instructional format, which really is showing we have whole group at 47.2%, and we have independent at 36. We have only 8.3 at small group. And multiple would be that if we were there for the 5 to 7 minutes and they moved from one to the other, we did record that as multiple.
Can I ask the nature of the independent work? Like, to me, it means, oh God, they're doing worksheets.
Not necessarily
Okay, yes.
doing worksheets, but I will say there was times where they were on their
Yeah.
computer doing their paths.
Yeah.
Could be a worksheet, but oftentimes there could be one using manipulatives. It did not necessarily mean that, although
Yeah.
we do see that throughout the
Yeah.
district a lot, yes.
This surprised me a lot because there was a big push for small group learning for, like, when I was here, there was tons of professional development on small group learning.
Mhm.
And so did you, like, was that an aha for the district as well in terms
Yes,
of the
to see that much whole
application
group is certainly an aha moment. I will say these are 5 to 7 minute pop-ins, right?
Okay.
So this is just to get a glimpse, but that's 35 classrooms that we went to. And that
And
was-
the EL curriculum is mostly small group, like that's how it's designed by nature.
It can be,
Okay. Oh, I mean, in theory.
in
it's-
theory.
Okay.
So, as far as classroom culture is concerned, there was pretty clear evidence of, respectful interactions, being respectful and inclusive, and language supports, belonging, voice, and learning. So that was really great to see in the classroom culture area. As far as level of challenge, students are working with age or grade appropriate content. We did see clear evidence of that in a lot of the classrooms that we went into, but the thinking deeply and the more rigorous challenge that we would like to see was not as evident. Instructional design, we did see multiple ways to access content. So there were different visuals, models, or examples, text, talk that were available to students in order to access content. For example, we went in one classroom and the teacher had differentiated the work for the students that needed it, sometimes with lines on the page, sometimes with only a line for each word, and so on, for visuals, and then having that up on the board as well. But then the multiple ways to demonstrate learning was an area that was not observed as much. In the instructional purpose category, task appears perfectly designed, not busy work. We did see a clear evidence of that. That there was a purpose to the work that was being done in the classroom. But we did not really see that students were understanding the purpose of their learning. And we did that by often going around asking students what they're doing and what they're trying to learn and their end goals and so on. And that was not as clear. In student engagement, it says students are actively engaged, participating and on task. And I want to say that I wouldn't actively engage may not be the right word for that, because when you look on that students are explaining thinking or asking questions, there's not as much evidence of that. And so we really do have a lot of compliance that is going on throughout the district, rather than that deep, rigorous learning.
What do you mean by compliance?
Well, the teacher says you're gonna do the worksheet, you sit and you do the worksheet, instead of the ones like, I'm not doing that, like that's, so we're seeing that students are doing what is asked of them, but it's not they may not be doing the thinking.
And like, one of the people that our evaluation system is based on used to say, hands-on versus minds-on. Just because you're doing something
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're engaged. You had to be
Yeah.
really thinking about it. To actually be engagement.
Mhm.
Did you say what grade levels you went into?
All different grade levels.
All the grade
Yeah.
levels? Okay.
All of them, pre-K through 12. So we did not go to MTA, because they have different structure, but we did do, pre-K through 12.
And who completed them? Who went on the walks?
I went and, Tara Hickola, who is our district instructional coach.
At some point, did you break down the grade levels? Cause I'm thinking about, students understanding what they're doing and being more engaged in it. You wonder if sometimes when they're younger, they don't do that as much as when they get older. Maybe you see it more at the high school. I didn't know if you broke it down that way at all.
There wasn't a significant trend,
There wasn't.
compared to grade level. It really was about what the lesson was too, more than with the grade levels.
Eliza, when you go into a class, do you introduce yourself? Just go in anonymously, or are you there prior to the class?
So I think.
I've noticed there's a change in mindset of all kids in a class when there's somebody there that's not normally there. It's generally for the better. That's my experience.
Not necessarily. We were only in there for 5 minutes and
Yeah.
there wasn't really a change,
Yeah.
in there. What was that? Oh, that was assessment. Can you go back?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
There we go.
there we go. So assessment for learning, teacher checks for understanding. We, really saw some evidence of that, but that's an area, that we could see some more evidence in. And then, students receive and use feedback is also an area that we did not see as much clear evidence. And so areas for consideration, and this you will hear about a little bit later as well. We have cognitive rigor and student thinking. So really what I had said before about students doing the thinking and is it deep and meaningful? Access, agency and clarity of learning, and can all students access the learning and take ownership of it? So this was the areas where they needed multiple ways to access, multiple ways to demonstrate, and then students understanding the purpose of their learning. And then, responsive teaching and feedback, working on that feedback loop, making sure that students are receiving, feedback and, instruction is being adapted based on the student understanding. So that is our, instructional visits for this year. Again, keeping it relatively informal, until we then codify what those areas are that we really need to work on based on what we have for data and the strategic plan, and our vision of instruction and all of those things together. We can then make our problems of practice to do something more formal.
So Addie, after 13 years, is this your finding as well?
I was just thinking about
Yeah.
our two young ones thinking, but you didn't know we actually talk about this stuff like this.
I just want to hear you really enjoyed your entire experience, because I really did. I was K through 12 here, and I still want that for every kid.
I don't know, it's just because I haven't graduated yet, I'm not like fully thinking about it like that. So maybe in a couple years I'll process it more.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Well said. I was curious if there's any plan for teacher teams to be able to go in and use the same tools that you used, because it's very helpful when you're going in with that kind of criteria into another person's classroom. That can actually be the thing that turns people around. They can see it then in themselves if they've seen it.
So traditional learning walks have that component. There's always, there's teachers that go along with that. And so when it is a more formalized process, that will certainly be part of it.
I'm a big believer in instructional rounds also. However, we have no sub coverage. We have too many people out and no subs, and it makes it quite literally impossible right now to run a really good instructional rounds program.
Yeah, so having one that might be able to come for a
Yeah.
visit is one thing, but to do the actual instructional rounds model would be quite.
It would be tough for us right now. Hopefully that will change.
But even if the teachers were given the whatever documentation that you used when you went in, and they tried to figure out a time when they could try to get into somebody else's classroom informally. It wouldn't even have to be a formal instructional rounds. I think it would be beneficial.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we were able to use our prep time to actually do instructional rounds, and I think we were compensated for it because we didn't have our prep time technically, but it was valuable experience, I thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11, graduation policy update.
This is the policy that just keeps coming.
Sorry, no.
No, what we did is we went over this pretty thoroughly at the policy committee. It went to the board. Now it's getting kicked back here for some further review, and then it will go back to the board. The issue really centers around the English and math requirements. So the state has changed English requirements from 4 years to 3 years in high school. We made that change, and there has been, like, honestly, not a lot of community concern, but some community concern. I think we've heard from 3 people who are concerned about the fact that is this detrimental to our students applying to college, because the college would look at the high school and say, oh, they only offer 3 years of English. They're not that good of a high school. That isn't how it works, though. The college looks at your course of studies, your program of studies, and it checks to see if the student did the most rigorous course that they could possibly do. So did they challenge themselves? Did they take that 4th year? If it, because we still recommend 4 years of college for all students who think they may ever even remotely go to college. But the reason for going to 3 years as the absolute minimum requirement to align with the state is that we do need to, and it's not just us, it's kind of Connecticut in general, we do need to catch up with alternative pathways for students who are not college bound, or for students who might, like I keep remembering that Linda says, and reminds me that there could be students who really want to excel in math and sciences, and they want to do that and not have to take a 4th English, or they may have reached AP English by junior year and they want to take other things their senior year. So, so we are back to this. At the last policy meeting, there was sort of a compromise that was struck where we would say a waiver would be required if a student is only taking 3 years of math or English. The concern with that, and I have to say I wholeheartedly agree with this concern, is that it becomes an equity issue. As in terms of, is that, it puts a burden on the family, as opposed to just saying this is what's available to you and you can choose. So I am in agreement with that. So one compromise, another compromise. I mean, if you want my opinion, I am perfectly content just saying it's 4 years recommended for college and 3 years required and not doing anything else. I don't think we need to do anything else. If there is still a concern about making sure that parents know that that 4th year is available, that it might be required for college, we could send a notice home. Like we could do a separate notice from the school counselor's home to just say, hey, just to make sure that you're aware, but not actually require the family to sign something saying that they're okay without that 4th credit. Just to throw that idea out there from Mrs. Stone.
I also think it's reasonable if you want to put it in the part of this is you can't come into 9th grade and say no English.
Yeah.
That it's only in your senior year that it's even an option.
Right.
I think that's a decent compromise if we wanted to do that. I too am fine with just doing what the state says has changed to. And I do think we're going to see more and more districts doing that, but we're at the cutting edge.
Yes.
I would like to bring up, there was one of the emails we received, and there was a suggestion about students who want to go in alternative routes and not to college, talking about English classes like business communications or English for the trades, where the students could develop practical skills, including writing estimates, creating business plans, and communicating effectively with clients and employers. Is that built into these
Career pathways.
career pathways? Because that's really important. That kind of caught my eye.
Yeah,
thought it was a
I mean, I don't think we have a specific course for that, right?
We do
But
not yet.
Right, not yet, but as we're building pathways, I think that's a good idea. The thing is that all senior classes for English are elective. no matter what. So that could just be elective that somebody decides to take. It doesn't matter if it's a 3 or a 4-year requirement.
Right, that was I love that idea.
Yeah.
When, in that,
Yeah.
that she
I thought it was
proposed.
good.
And I was like, yes, let's do that. But it actually doesn't, in my opinion, impact the 3 or 4 years.
Sure. Yeah. I know I'm late to the party, but I had a question about this when I went through this and that all the other requirements are either the same as the state or one less, except for world language, where we have 3 years required. And I know that when my kids were students here, they had trouble getting electives into their schedule because of requirements. So I don't know why we have 2 more than the state requirement.
It's 1 is required
Right, and we
and
have
3 is recommended if you want to go to college.
Oh, I see.
Right. So
I
the
think there's a
parentheses-
consistency in the way it's laid out,
Yeah.
may be helpful.
Yeah.
I think it.
Like the
When you said that, I was like,
parentheses are the
Yeah.
parentheses are the state requirements.
Yeah, okay.
So the parentheses are the minimum requirements, and then the numbers in front of that are the recommendations for college-bound students.
And I also don't know if that's necessarily accurate. Now, my kids are adults now, and so when my son was going into college, he was told he needed 3 years of a foreign language by the people here.
Mhm.
But then all of his colleges, MIT, everywhere he applied to, only needed 2.
Okay.
So I don't know if is 3 actually what is required now by colleges
Or
or.
to be what information our counselors are getting, but they also do a very nice job, whether it's in the junior meetings, senior meetings, I know Addie can speak to this too, of really just encouraging students if they think they're going to college,
Right.
to look at those specific ones, just to make sure.
Get their college.
Yes.
And I think that's a good point, like MIT isn't gonna have as high a language requirement as Harvard, not
Right.
because it's Harvard. But because it's a comprehensive, right? But if you're gonna be an engineer, they're like, all right, we want you to know German, but we know you don't know German, so we'll take 2.
Right, yeah. So,
I would really like to see some of those, I'll call it business English or trade English.
mhm.
Okay, how, whatever you decide to almost have it, first of all, to have it available as soon as possible, and secondly, to have it, a requirement, because that's such an important skill in business, to just writing letters, talking to people, you know, and setting these, I think of my grandson and all, being in the trades, you know,
Figuring out. how
why
to
shouldn't
use
it be
AI,
required for them too? What?
Or figuring out how to use AI to write it for you.
I think there's a point
Oh, I
the students love,
Yeah.
where you question maybe 10th, 11th grade. Why do I need to know this? It's this question that was always burning in my mind, like, you know, and I was very shy about it, but dare I ask? But there's gotta be relevance and pertinence to
Well,
things.
it's related to your trade as opposed to just English literature. And you're going to be a plumber.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It wouldn't just be one trade in particular, but yeah.
Might be a color on the
There's
side.
no beauty in the word even.
I understand that. I
Well,
understand.
no, there were,
I think I think you're right, but I also think that the way to address it is to embed it. And so that in art class, there's writing in art class, so that in science and in all the classes, because it makes it relevant and engaging.
Yeah.
Sure.
To have writing in the business class
Yeah.
rather than English business writing.
Right, right, right,
reading technical articles is
Yeah.
different than
Yeah.
reading a novel.
Right,
and
right.
Having a skill to read technical stuff, you know, in terms of an engineering project.
Right.
It's a very different type of reading
Yeah.
and understanding.
True.
And it's a different skill, I think.
That's true.
And I think that will come along as we do the pathways. I met with Katie and the team leaders at the high school. Was that last week?
I think only last week.
Seems like it was longer ago, but yeah, it was last week. And we talked a lot about the information that came forward from the strategic plan about the need for pathways. And one of the things that came up was the need, we're seeing a need to design a math experience or pathway for CTE. So our students who are going to CTE aren't actually prepared with enough math that they need in CTE. So when we started talking about that, English was saying, that would be great for us, you know, so I do think that this is something that will happen as those are.
The system that I teach in, that is a collaboration that we acknowledged was deficient.
Mhm.
So we actually have monthly meetings with the math
Yeah.
teachers and seeing what they can do to incorporate that into their curriculum to make it a bit more relevant to the trade. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a problem,
Yeah.
for sure.
Are you recommending no changes to the policy as it stands right now?
No, I'm recommending that we get rid of the waiver. I don't think we need the waiver, and I do agree that it presents an equity issue.
Yeah, I agree.
I had one other question, and this was going into, I guess, looking at all the documents, thinking about students with special needs. So I'm wondering, do we need to have more physical education that is more accessible to all students? Because if they're getting waivers to not have to have a physical education requirement, perhaps that means that our courses aren't necessarily meeting all the needs.
I think it's very rare that somebody gets a waiver.
Okay.
I would say that's
Yeah.
true, and usually our waiver, just for an example, if a student can't participate because they can't have the risk of impact,
Mhm.
then we will still be granting them credit for PE, but based on exercise logs of activities that they can safely complete at home and maybe over an extended period of time. So I think it's very rare for us to actually say, nope, you're good,
Right.
you were excused.
Okay. Is that this?
Yeah,
concern?
absolutely.
I know that, my previous place, we had a really strong adaptive PE program
Yes.
that like went all the way through. Yeah, so those are things that we can look at, especially in the lower grades.
Looking a little more broadly, outside of just the high school, in the years past, there was a tech ed, they used to call it CHOP, at Memorial. And Memorial had various configurations of grade levels, and at some point it was 5, 6, 7, 8. And all of those students had the opportunity to get into, I think they had homemaking and they also had the tech ed. And then all of that was taken away. Now, if we're pushing to try to catch up at the high school for pathways for trades, are we doing anything at the middle school?
We are. Mhm.
Yeah, because that's important.
So we have family consumer sciences, we have shop.
Good job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Every time I go in there, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Using
I
socks.
cannot.
Here I go again. Shall I bring my cutting board that your husband taught me how to make back in?
But like young
I
chefs
know,
and
I know.
young chefs is very popular. So yes, we do have a, what do we want to call it?
Start is when they're.
A farm team.
Coming into the high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do have to say, now that you mentioned that there are, students that my husband had who are now adults, their fathers or mothers and all, and they say, oh, Mr. Petrella, I made that in your class and I still have it home and I still have it hanging and stuff like that. So it's something that stayed with them. for a
Yeah,
long
tangible
time.
things like that people
A
remember
long time.
most, I think.
My mom still uses the hot plate I made in 7th grade.
Yeah.
A plate?
Must be well made.
So you mean like a trivet or something, like, okay.
Like they won't lose any of those, like for not taking, like, you know, like if you're looking at the curriculum and writing the curriculum aligned with standards, there won't be like standards that aren't taught necessarily to those kids that don't.
No, and one of the concerns that came up at one point was, well, what if they need that 4th year to be able to be proficient or something? So my response to that is if they're in 12th grade
That's
and
what I'm thinking,
we have a bigger problem.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
haven't
well,
done everything
yeah.
that we need to do by senior year.
My daughter just learned the difference between singular possessive and plural possessive for the SAT. So I was like, oh God, where did you miss that along the way? You know? Oh, boy. Yeah, she's gonna hate me for saying that.
And it's on her.
Yeah.
Okay, item 12, overview of PLCs.
I just wanted to, so we are gonna move this back to the
Yeah,
board
for the-
with the removal of the waiver.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as that's coupled with sending the notice.
Yes, I'll send a notification.
Yeah.
Mhm. And our school counselors do an amazing job of planning and requirements.
Just communicating and making sure we're thinking of all of our options. They do a really nice job.
You had requested an overview of PLCs and data teams and we put et cetera. What I want to say is, we're gonna kind of morph that into the strategic plan and the vision of a graduate that you're looking at, because this is something that we just need to work on. So I want to talk about how that will happen in year 1 when we get to that point, but we didn't want to ignore your request.
Yes.
So I can cross that one
You
off.
can cross that off. Mhm. We'll do it. We'll just do it as part of the other work.
Feeling like I might get home sometime.
All right, item 13, data review, the SAT data for 2026.
Yes.
This is you.
I need to pull up. the SAT. Sorry, that's the only one we didn't have ready.
Yeah, I forgot. It's
It's in the folder.
It's in the.
Oh, it's in the folder. I'm
So
sorry.
it's it's been pretty stable. Small dip in 2023. And back up. Or was it 24? Oh,
Oh, yeah, that one.
Yeah, that was too.
Yeah.
It's,
Yes.
yeah, that's fun. That's.
You wanna see it, Rob?
So many acronyms.
How come I am not, is it in the shared drive? No, it's not.
It's in what she
So
sent out.
if you go to
Just go when Meg's, when Meg's
Meeting
meeting out the
materials.
notice.
Yeah, if you
It's
go to
on
Ma-
there.
That's probably the easier.
Sorry.
I have this little, well, no, I'll talk because I'll
There you
always
go.
fill the silence.
There you go.
Hold on, let me, while you're
Thank you.
talking, I will.
I have this theory that is just totally theoretical and not based on, any kind of research, but I really believe but it's fascinating to me how in 2022, right, our scores were pretty good. And it's right after the pandemic, and the way I believe that, when we were all trapped at home, parents know how to read to kids, right? So they didn't quote unquote lose as much time in reading because parents could, at the very least, read to and with their kids. However, parents don't necessarily know how to teach math because it keeps changing how we teach math. And so that's one reason I think why we haven't recovered our math scores is because the people at home weren't able to reinforce or force the learning in math. And so I'm using this as evidence for my theory. Thank you very much.
There we go.
My drop.
Yes, so they have remained pretty stable throughout. Remember that these are different cohorts of students, so we cannot really compare apples to apples 1 year to the next. We can just look at trends. It's also a different test every year with different questions. So it's just looking to make sure that we're maintaining our good scores. We are above the state total. And that we are continuously improving.
Do you see correlation between the PSATs and the SAT scores?
There's some correlation between PSAT and SAT, but I know that our counselors go in and really help our students to know where to look with the PSATs. And I know a lot of students do practice with that. There's a whole thing where you can go in and see exactly your PSAT question that you got wrong. It sends you to how to improve in that area. And I know that our counselors do a great job giving students that option, and that many take up time to do that.
There's articles that come out and they're still saying that, overall nationwide, the scores have not really reached the pre-COVID scores. And so we're following pretty much the same pattern as everywhere else.
Sure.
So I'm gonna say that being that we have a new superintendent and we're starting to work on our portrait of a graduate, portrait of a student, portrait of instruction. I would love for us, because we're right at the cusp of being able to be the top school that sets the model and breaks us out of this pattern that the whole nation is falling into. I have high aspirations, high hopes, because I think we could do it. We've done it before. The district's been really high before, and I think we could do it again with the right leader.
Comparison is the killer of joy.
Right leader. I'm saying, we need to get out there.
Well, but saying that we want to be number one, well, but that's comparing. I just want our kids to be happy.
So I think, Lucy, I agree with you that
Can you say Dirk?
No, I refuse to say dirt.
Happy.
I believe we can do better. Like, we have all the ingredients necessary for higher achievement with students. I don't doubt that at all. The one thing that I want to just put out there is that I want us to look at the ways that we're measuring success. This is one way. I think we need to look at other ways, especially as we go into pathways. We need to look at other measures of success. For example, I was talking to one of community members during one of the focus groups who said she was very upset that we don't have kids going to the top name schools anymore or whatever, which we have kids going to great colleges, like there's no question about it. But she was talking about the names, you know, the names everybody always hears. And my response was, that could be a fantastic thing, because that means that our students are not going into debt.
That's right.
$500,000 of debt that they might wind up in a career that they're not happy, or they're not going to be happy because they're in a different career and they're paying off their loans until they're 60, you know, so that was just an example of, I wholeheartedly agree that our achievement will rise, but I don't want to just rely on that. We need to have better measures of
Absolutely.
students, like maybe kindness. One.
It is, for these years listed, this year was the greatest difference between the state average, combined average. We were 89 points above the state average, and that's the highest of those 5 years listed. So that's one plus.
That's good, yeah.
Sure.
All it takes is one super score though to make that happen
That's
and
very true.
average it out.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that a lot of schools post-COVID, a lot of even those top name schools, don't require the SAT anymore.
Right.
So then there's also the concept of buy-in, and, you know, we hope our students approach the test and want to do their best, but sometimes it's just another test. I hate to say it like that.
And you don't want me to talk about the College Board as a.
Sure,
as an entity.
exactly, yep. And that the format of the test has changed from paper to online, probably within those years that we're looking
Yep,
at.
it is within those years.
There's just
And-
been a lot of change about how we even approach the SAT. It's just all very interesting.
And when you're on screens concentrating, I don't know about you, but I still print out something sometimes because it's easier to focus and read
And
and
interact with
and
the
interact with.
information.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something
So-
about a calculator
Right.
being
Right.
taken away, like, or
Yeah.
soon Maddie wants to take like her SATs before that happens because she's nervous. Yeah.
So Will, we're counting on you as you be a junior next year to get the scores up.
A lot of pressure, kid.
I think he can handle it.
Okay, item 14, strategic plan.
I do want to say we're at 6:01, Linda. Do you have to go?
I got, well, and I got like 10 minutes.
Okay. I won't, so I'm really excited about this, and you might need to leave in the middle, and
I know, and that's
Got
what
you.
I know you're very excited.
I'm
about.
very excited.
How
about
can
this.
I walk away?
So we are finally, after a year, and I was thinking, I was reminiscing today because the leadership team met today and did kind of a final overview of the strategic plan, vision of a graduate, vision of instruction. And after a year, we are launching something that I remember talking to leadership about my very first day here in July, in this room, actually, when we were meeting for leadership team week. So here we go. And I want to preface my quick presentation by saying, you're going to get a lot. You're going to get a lot of information. You will feel overwhelmed. It's just going to be inevitable. But there is purpose, and we have vision, and we have a plan, and it all dovetails together. You know, we were talking about how it's like some fine carpentry dovetails. It all fits together. We also recognize that there's going to be, these are drafts. There's going to be revision. We want feedback. These are going to go out to the entire community, all the staff, parents, guardians, everybody, and we're going to get a lot of feedback. So we know that these are going to change.
This wasn't in the materials before, right?
No.
Okay.
You are the group that's getting the very first look publicly. So in terms of purpose, vision, and plan, we have 3 critical components that we're gonna give you, and I will email this all to you, and I'm gonna email it to the board, and then the board will, and the public, and then the board will start to talk about it at their June 10th meeting. So the 3 things you're gonna see are vision of a graduate, which is going to be the promise that we make to students and families about the knowledge, skills, attributes, and dispositions every learner will develop throughout their pre-K through MTA experience in Region 13. We like to think of this as a promise. This is our commitment. The vision of instruction is the commitment that we make as educators to provide the consistent, high-quality learning experiences and instructional practices necessary to bring our vision of a graduate to life. And then we've got the 5-year strategic plan. That's the one that's really going to overwhelm you. So don't let it, because it's balanced. It makes sense when you take it year by year. This is the roadmap that outlines our priorities, goals, objectives, and action steps over the next 5 years to ensure our vision of a graduate and vision of instruction are successfully realized. So that's what puts it all together. We went on a theory from Elizabeth City's work on strategic planning, which is think big, act small, and learn fast. I was thinking that we were just talking about instructional rounds. Liz City is also the instructional rounds author, one of the two. So she wrote a great book about strategic planning, and we took that as our core premise of think big, act small, and learn fast. That's how we're going to make lasting change. In the vision of a graduate, just to give you an overview of the process, we had about 381 survey responses that came back in the fall. We honored prior work. So if something was part of prior 3 versions, which you've had, it stayed. You know, if something showed up in those 3 versions, there was no reason to not honor that work that was done before. I did 21 focus groups with approximately 12 people each. These were from students, parents, guardians, community members, Chamber of Commerce, et cetera. A really nice mix of input there. And then I did follow-up meetings at each school, 2 at each school for clarification and feedback. And then leadership team did the final steps together. And this is our vision of a graduate model.
I'm blind.
And yeah, and what we have, and the tree really worked with this. So we have the roots. Our roots are our core ethical values. So
Is it an oak tree?
yes, it is a tree, as a matter of fact. So in all of the focus groups, the survey, everything, the core ethical values are alive and well in Region 13. They are discussed, they're talked about, people love them, they hang on to them, they use them in conversation. So those are the roots that are the start of everything. When we get into the main work of everything from pre-K to MTA, we have sort of an equation where it's the essential attributes, which is who we are and how we show up. Those are our attributes, plus durable skills, what we know and what we can do. When you add those 2 things together, we wind up with the core competencies, 5 core competencies. And there's been some misconception of a vision of a graduate that these are like the things you're supposed to achieve by the time you graduate. And that is not the case. These 5 core competencies should be seen in kindergarten, in pre-K, in 6th grade, 7th grade, 12th grade, MTA, all the way through. These are things that should be evident at every level. The core competencies, I'll go with the core competencies, but what you'll see when you get this is we have an elementary statement and then a secondary statement because we want the kids to be able to live these. So it was really important to make sure that they would all be able to articulate these. So the 5 core competencies were developed that our students will be a growth-oriented learner. They will be an innovative solution seeker. They'll be a responsive and self-directed navigator, a conscientious community champion, and a purposeful communicator and collaborator. And these were the ones that rose to the top from all of that feedback and how they came together. I have to say that the 2 that were the most prevalent were growth-oriented learner, the idea of productive struggle and like safe failure were huge in the feedback. And responsive and self-directed navigator was also huge. And I think that has a lot to do with recognition that we are, the kids are facing an uncertain future right now. Careers are coming and going very quickly. AI is changing a lot. There's a lot that's changing globally. And so the idea of being a navigator, being able to navigate and be nimble and agile really rose to the top as well.
Sounds like a good mascot for
A navigator,
the navigators.
the navigator squirrel in the oak tree.
Yeah, got the acorn,
Yeah.
the saplings and the squirrel.
And then, and I'm trying to make this really short. So that's the big picture overview. I think it's really exciting. And, you know, when we think that like, this is us, this is Region 13, that it really resonated with everybody is that this is what we're about. This is what we want for our students at every level. This is the promise that we want to make, that those are the things that we'll deliver. And then on a very separate track, Liza did the vision of instruction, and we intentionally didn't talk to each other through the process because we wanted to see what would rise up from both. And of course, like we had our Clark Kent really is Superman moment, and they fit perfectly together. So I'm going to let Liza take it away with vision of instruction.
All right.
with vision of instruction. Could you go back? All right. So with vision of instruction, here's an update on where we stand. The development input consisted of 18 staff focus groups, 106 staff survey responses, 35 classroom visits from the instructional visits, student surveys. We had 244 student responses from grades 9 through 12, and then examples and research looking at different examples of that, as well as current research on building and implementing a vision of instruction. Things that really rose to the top for this was resilience and failure. Making sure that there is that there's supported failure so that students can practice resilience, real world application, institutional consistency, the digital paradox of that we want to make sure that students are technology ready, but we can't have them on screens all the time, and how we are working with parents and the community at large. So this coming together created a vision statement with all the different aspects to cultivate an equitable and inclusive learning community where rigorous, authentic instruction empowers every student to achieve real world mastery, and that is a lot. But that is explained on the next slides with our 5 descriptors. We haven't really come up with the word we really want. Originally, I had pillars, and then there was elements. So
Rays of sunshine.
rays, 5 rays, whatever you want to believe. So I really, in the graphic, I had seen the tree, I saw the tree prior to designing a graphic, and so I thought about something that would help a tree grow, because that is.
Not gonna lie, I actually went there as soon as I happened, but I had already talked about the squirrels.
So helping tree grow. So sunshine certainly aids in that process. So the 5 elements, descriptors, whatever we're going to call them, rigorous, authentic, responsive, inclusive, and coherent came really out to be the main 5. And going to the next slide, please, we have rigorous, maintaining high expectations for every student and embedding productive struggle, scaffolding resistance, and equitable access to grade level mastery, with 3 points to really focus on: culture of productive struggle, equitable access to grade level content, and scaffolded independence. In the authentic category, we have students providing, getting hands-on, inquiry-driven, and real-world application, connecting classroom learning to our broader world, with our focus areas of experiential hands-on pedagogies, which, as you'll see, really all of this ties in. I'll just keep going. All this ties in. Real world application and purposeful technology integration. In responsive, utilizing real-time data, continuous feedback, and reflective practices to adapt instruction and foster ongoing growth for every learner. So we have focus on real-time adjustments, making sure that our formative tools work, our data is ready to go, so that we can meet the learning needs in the immediate. Actionable feedback systems, providing that feedback loop and feedback for students as well. And adaptive and continuous growth, which is fostering that dynamic learning environment, embracing change, and continuous evolving teaching practices as we move forward in the 21st century. Inclusive, cultivating a culture of deep belonging, safety, uniting families, students, and staff, and a shared commitment to inclusive community and mutual respect. Providing a foundation of belonging, which is, as we know, is extremely important for student success. A proactive homeschool alliance in partnership with families through communication, aligning expectations around student accountability, academic challenge, and independence, so that we can have consistency for students, and student peer-to-peer collaboration, making sure that they have those opportunities for collaboration through it to develop communication, empathy, and problem-solving skills. And finally, coherent. This is a big thing we heard already. today, about having coherence within the district, establishing institutional predictability, structural alignment, collaborative teamwork, and systemic consistencies. So the first area would be systemic alignment. Second is structured professional collaboration, really optimizing time for teachers to have those conversations, as we just talked about, as we develop our PLCs and other ways, and unified instructional expectations, so that we have that those shared expectations across schools, across districts, so that we can make sure that we have that secure and predictable environment for both staff and students. So that is what came out with all of the data for the vision of instruction.
And you can see how they're already aligning. And then I get to stand up for a minute because I've been trying with the cushion. So all of this, so when you think about, so we went divergent, right? We went divergent, we went out, we looked at the vision, we do the vision work, and then we work at sort of the convergent part. And the convergent part came into the vision of a graduate, the vision of instruction. And then along the way, you can probably already see Rosie's report and the learning walks already fitting into this with the information that we had. And then along the way, we were able to define specific goals from the strategic plan. So I'm just going to hand out the overview. And again, you're going to get this whole thing, and we're not going to read through the whole thing because there's too much. But these are the overarching goals that rose to the top for the district. And then what we did. Make sure that when we're looking at this, if you kind of look up on the screen right now, over the next 5 years, there are going to be 4 main elements of the strategic plan. And those are, when we redo the strategic plan in 2031, getting ready for 2032, those 4 will still be there. And that's climate and culture, community connections, student achievement, and resources. And then underneath, in this 5-year period, we have 2 like kind of rotating goals that we know won't be there beyond these 5 years. And that's pathways, looking at the pathways for the high school, like we've been talking about, in the transition into Three Oaks Memorial. So those are the 2 that are going to be the rotating goals during this period. So when you see the next plan, you'll see the same 4 up there, and you will see 2 to 3 different rotating goals when we get to the next one. So I'm just going to take you on a little tour of the strategic plan, because you can do this tour at home when you get this spreadsheet in your spare time. And then you can see each goal in each of these areas. And then we have a master list of every goal. There were objectives for each that were built. And then along the way, people had fantastic ideas while we were talking about these in these focus groups and in these meetings. So we just made a list of potential action steps. We designated a year that this should be the focus, and they were built, 1 on triage, what's the most important, and 2 sequential, what has to be done before we can go to something else. We also, I'm a big believer in making sure that things are manageable and that we set ourselves up for success. So we assigned who the administrator would be, the point person of each objective, which teachers would be involved, which support staff would be involved, and which special services, such as like food service or tech team or anything like that. So you can actually sort this spreadsheet by all of those different pieces of data. So we balanced it to make sure that no one year is overly heavy on any individual or any group. And that, again, the sequence built so that it makes it something that we believe we can accomplish. You'll see that it's also sorted by year. So we have, for example, you can say this is what we're doing in 2027 under each goal category. These are the plans for 2028 by each category. 29, keep going. And then you can see just by the goal. So if you want to go into just community connections, you can see that, climate and culture, student achievement, resources. And then in this one, you can see the pathways are there for the high school. And then you can see the transition. And for example, the transition year is just about fall 2027, because that's when it has to take place. But you can go in and you can say, and then there are some. So we have, if you're looking by year, for example, there's one category that's annual. And these are ones where we will honor that think big, act small. And we really truly believe that one small step in an area can make a huge difference in lasting change. So in the annual column, these are the ones where we will choose one small step to make under each goal and objective that's listed here. And that we will take the annual each year, one small step. And then, for example, these are our goals for 2027. And that's our plan for that year. And then we report out every 6 months, January and July, to the board and to the public to see how far we've gotten, what we need to change, and plan for the next year after that.
It's a thing of beauty now.
It is a thing of beauty. So this is where, you know, it has been a lot of really good work, and I'm so thankful for everybody who was part of this. But it really is a great combination of the vision and the plan, you know, the very detailed plan. And you could take any single piece of this plan and you can match it up to either vision. You can take any part of the vision and you can find where it is in the plan. So the puzzle pieces are really nicely together. And that doesn't mean that it's perfect. It isn't. But people have, you know, the next probably 2 weeks to a month to look at it, to talk about it, to give feedback, for the board to look at it, to have more sessions from, you know, for staff feedback. We'll see what we need to tweak, and then hopefully we can launch it by July.
Awesome.
You can see why I was excited.
I can, well, and especially.
Get it all on.
Oh, I want to show Bob one part that I know he's going to be particularly happy about. Right, so if we go into the resources tab, and if we go into,
Vote the budget next week.
yes. If we go into the resources tab, and one of the objectives is a comprehensive 5, 10, and 20-year capital plan, just go ahead and click this and open a new window. And there's our capital plan
Oh, good.
for the
You
next
gotta have that glycol in there.
20 years.
That was like my biggest learning curve is what the heck is glycol?
That's listed by priority level, the school, the year that it's been serviced, the lifespan, year of completion, estimated cost, funding source, bundle, if it's part of a bundle, if we need to bid it, if it's a bond, or, you know, it's all there.
Great.
Wow. I love a plan. I love actually there being a plan.
Yes.
And vision is one thing, but who's that guy that is it Noster or someone that has? If you have these 8 things in order for a project to be successful and you're missing one, this is what's gonna happen.
Cool to have.
And we have had visions
Yeah.
since I've been here, but we had nothing else to go with it. So,
Oh, I don't think.
I'm enamored.
Yeah.
Now.
Once these are,
Wow.
once these are approved by the board, like once we get that, a couple of iterations of for vision, and once it's approved by the board, what I want to do is I want to go back one more time and assign like the core competency and the instructional vision, like make sure that everybody sees, because, you know, just to make sure that everybody sees how everything is in alignment. And then we need a big rollout and make it fun and videos and things like that. But we also want to, each year, we want to design the SMART goals for that year ahead, right? So once this is approved, the first thing that the leadership team will do over the summer is take annual in 2027 and do the SMART goals for those things and move forward. And then the same thing each successive year.
Cheers.
Nice.
It was all of us. It was a lot of input, a lot of incredibly thoughtful, authentic input from everybody that I talked to. Really amazing. Yes.
But it was a lot.
I really do. I feel proud of where we are with these graphs. I really do. Yeah, we're in a good place.
Right, the coherence
It's the coherence.
among all of them. And like you said, what Rosie talked about, what all of the, I'm leaving now just in case the next thing is about assessments, a downer, so I don't really. I'm also on the state, I'm also on the state thing, so I know.
Oh, you
about
are?
it. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But thank you very much. I
Thank you.
apologize, I had to leave early, but there are dogs who need to not kill each other this evening.
Tell them to behave.
Oh, okay, is that all?
Yeah.
Like this.
Sounds-
Just do the-
sounds odd.
do the next right thing. All right, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, next item.
Maybe we
Yeah,
do an
I-
assessment inventory before,
I
and then
know.
we end with
Well,
this.
We really should have, because it's kind of boring compared to that.
Are you gonna, this is gonna be all on the computer,
Yeah.
it's also gonna be available in some kind of other format?
Yeah, so
or something?
the tree that I have is
Yeah,
AI generated, and we can't copyright an AI image.
Yeah.
We can't. So once it's approved, we need to actually hire a graphic designer or find somebody in-house who can do the tree. Cause I think the tree works really well. And then take Liza's vision of instruction sun on top and like really blow that up as the vision that goes everywhere.
I think we have plenty of students that
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah. And then, obviously not everybody wants the whole spreadsheet, but these need to be very public and out and like big posters of what our goals are for the next 5 years. And then if people want to dive into the objectives or to the like potential action steps, if they want to see year by year what's going to happen, that's all available. But these are the ones that really need to be out there.
Sometimes people need the vision that there is a plan there, not just the concept that there's a plan there.
Yes.
It's gonna need something physical to say.
I mean, we can do a lot, like when we do the graphic, I think the graphics is important because I really think it works for Region 13, especially with those core competencies, like those were so big in all the conversations. But I think that we can do some things like on every poster, we can have a QR code to the strategic plan, you know? We can have printed copies everywhere. We can do year by year posters of this is what's on the agenda for this year. And then hopefully people will pay attention to those 6-month updates, you know, and just say, this is, usually I do those with red, yellow, and green. I keep them really simple. We're done with this is in progress, or we haven't started, you know, and then we can just keep track the whole way through.
Well, looking forward to read.
Yes,
a direction.
yeah, and I,
District has a
while you're reading, all of you, like jot down your potential action steps, jot down your ideas that you think should go in there, because that's where those came from, is we're like, oh, this is an objective that's rising up. What could we do? And people are like, oh, we do this, you know, so that's where the good ideas come
And the
from.
role that the board should take as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Assessment inventory.
Given the time, I'll try to make this
Yes.
quick. So last year, the State Department of Education asked for assessment audit from each of the districts. Some of the parameters were that we do not include the state assessments such as SBAC and DSS and SAT. That it has to be a district or school required assessment, could not be edited by the teacher. So there were some different parameters around that. So we did our best. We gathered up all our information. We sent it to the state. They sent us a report back with some graphs. We then used a tool called their team reflection tool in one group of K-8 principals, as well as instructional coaches, and another group in 9-12 counselors and principals to look at the assessment audit, what came back to us, really focusing on describing it, analyzing it, and evaluating it based on the tool. What we found really was that it wasn't exactly accurate. It was a year out, and we had made some assessment change to move like one assessment to another grade level and so on. So what we did was we really looked through it. We fixed what we didn't find accurate to make sure that we were using accurate information to analyze and evaluate the situation. We looked at the amount of testing that was taking place at each grade level. We looked at any, if the tests were giving us, if the assessments were giving us useful insights to make sure that they were necessary, and also looking for if there was any overlap. So if we were giving an assessment, but another assessment was already giving us that information, so we could not use that anymore. In the K through 8 outcome overall, we did not find overlap in what we were assessing. We did find that every assessment we gave did give us different information to look at. But we did also find that there is a lot of testing going on. I think that's one of the reasons that the state did this, is because, especially on the webinars I went to, they were really emphasizing to make sure that the tests were useful and not to over test students, especially given how long our state assessments actually take as well. So when we redid our assessments for this year with hours, we're looking anywhere from 5 hours in kindergarten to 15 hours in middle school. Overall, again, that's not including state tests. That's not including just classroom assessments as well, or performance tasks. So there is a decent amount of testing that is going on. So we really need to, we also talked about what type of assessments we think are the best, especially for the younger ones. We like interview-based ones because that gives you the best information for a student rather than them filling in papers or doing something on a computer. However, that takes a lot of time for someone to actually do. In a lot of cases, it's actually less time for the student themselves, but overall, for that to happen, that's a lot of time for the teacher. But in K through 2, we're really moving to more more interview-based. Also looking at what assessments we're giving. For example, iReady takes a lot of time in our grades 3 through 5. iReady is now moving to iReady Inform, which they say is going to take less time. So we're interested next year to see how that happens. And if it doesn't really give us what we need with the short amount of time, or it doesn't take less time, we're going to look into seeing what else could be available to shorten that load on time for students. Also, another thing we could do is look at the state interim assessments. That was a push in one of the webinars I went to. Those are really aligned with standards. They are throughout the year. They can really inform what we need, and they're free. So utilizing those at certain times may be a way to take away some of the other more overreaching ones, and to focus more on exactly where students should be with certain standards within the school year. And we're also looking at strategic calendar placement, making sure we're not inundating with students with anywhere that with anything overlapping. We did have a consultant from iReady. That's part of when you purchase it, you get to meet with people throughout the year. And he was saying how we're one of the only districts he knows that does that in March. Most of them do it at the end of the year, but we do it in March because we use it to inform our next leg of instruction, as well as not overlap with SBAC.
Also,
but then at the same
teacher evaluation also was used in teacher evaluation in the past.
Yeah, so So and if it's not at the end of the year, you're not seeing the overall learning. So there's various ways to go about that. So we're really looking to strategically use our calendar to make sure we're not over testing at certain times of the year. In 9 to 12 outcomes, really looking more at our departments, and we really only looked at the PSAT. The SAT is part of our accountability system from the state, so we didn't add that because that was part of the parameters. So we really had the PSAT as the district assessment in the high school. So really digging down a little deeper and seeing what is involved in the departments themselves for those tests. We sometimes only have one teacher for a certain class. So the parameter of not teacher, editable, that kind of thing kind of was not part of that. So looking at that and utilizing our data platform a little bit more as well. So we went through that a little bit.
Can I ask if this assessment survey from the assessment inventory is its purpose more about testing time, or does it also include enough about like quality of assessments and using the assessment after you give it, like using the data? Or are they really primarily looking at over testing?
I was from the report, it looked more like over testing. There was no analysis of like, oh, iReady's a good test or not a good test or anything like that. It was, this is how much time students are testing overall. This is how much time in each subject and so on.
So In your opinion, was there anything productive that happened with all this work that you had to do?
Yes,
I
because
love
that's-
that
it
question
gets-
so much.
It is, it was a lot to gather, I will say, but it always gets that conversation, right? So we're always looking at assessments, but it really does prompt a deeper discussion, really, especially with the tools that are provided. So it does, help.
My rule of thumb with assessment has always been, don't give an assessment unless you're gonna use the data.
Yes.
So like, that's always the first thing that we should look for, I think.
Yeah, and that was another part of the tool. We met for a couple hours so far. We didn't get to that part yet, but we will continue that discussion.
It actually came at a good time, if you want to call anything from the state a good time, because we were looking at what assessments we were going to be using. We were just talking about that at our last student achievement meeting, so it kind of gives us a little push to get it done.
Yeah.
And a little bit direction too, by not using state.
And I don't know what Linda was talking about with the bigger assessment thing. Do you know specifically what the
Is it
state's doing?
Scale? Something?
Oh, scale, okay.
I don't know if that's it. If that's what
Well,
she was
scale is the one where they're really kind of diving into a method of looking at assessment, you know.
Wasn't sure if that's what she was referring to.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's the only assessment, state thing that I'm aware of. Outside of like the universal screeners and all the other stuff that, they're inquiring about.
Well, if there isn't anything else, just wondered if either one of our two students have any comments they want to make or thoughts or.
Well, this was really nice to see. I didn't know there was a meeting talking about like student achievement, so this is very nice. And I liked all the presentations and the visuals. That definitely helps. So.
What you want.
I guess I was surprised at how like thorough and how many documents and how much stuff that they talked about and mentioned.
I mean, you just come and wake up and come to school, right? No, this is all the behind the scenes stuff that we're working really hard on.
And it's kind of interesting to see like all the graphs that was made at like the visits to the schools. Cause I remember seeing like principals, superintendents walking the classrooms. And I never actually knew what they used that like data for, or like what they're actually like evaluating.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your year. As short as it is.
Yeah.
This sounds like you doing this report at the end of the semester.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have meetings like?
No, I mean, you're doing this for your government class. But
Yeah.
normally you would do it like at the beginning of the class instead of.
Yeah,
We
it's
only
like,
have,
it's
like,
like our
a week
final
left.
project. Yeah, it's due like on Tuesday.
Yeah,
So, yeah, not a lot of time, but it's a
Yeah.
way to kind of keep us engaged before the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot going on right now
Yeah.
after AP tests, so.
that's true.
Yeah, but this was really good. And it's like actually going into the community and learning about it instead of just, I don't know, just random assignments, so.
Good.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
There is nobody online.
No one's online. Wow. Okay,
Move
motion to
adjourned.
adjourn.
So moved.
And then Jamie, all in favor? Aye, at 6:37.
Thanks, everybody. I know this was a whopper.